Hello, welcome back to Today's COVID Kitchen on YouTube. We cover everything on this channel from entrees to desserts to craft cocktails. We're even going to get into some urban gardening. Today I'm going to show you how to make a really flavorful, delicious, but easy side dish that you can pair with really any kind of meat. You can pair it with your chicken or a nice pork loin would be delicious with this, a beef roast. It's roasted Rosemary-Parmesan potatoes. And we're just gonna use a few basic ingredients. We're gonna use potatoes. I'm using red potatoes today. We're gonna need olive oil, garlic, some fresh rosemary, some fresh chopped rosemary, and some grated Parmesan cheese. So let's get started cooking, y'all. This recipe does not require a lot of ingredients, but of course, what we have, I'm gonna talk you through today. And what I want you to do before you get started cooking is go ahead and preheat your oven to 375 degrees. And then you're also gonna need a pretty good size baking sheet. You can see the number of potatoes I'm making here. I usually have to cook in small quantities. So the recipe that I share with you is going to be based on this quantity of potatoes, but certainly you can make adjustments if you need to make more or less. So let's go through the ingredients. Obviously, I've got a handful of red potatoes here. What's so great about this recipe, and makes it so easy to prepare, is you don't have to do any peeling. You're just going to clean your potatoes thoroughly, and then we're going to chop these into kind of like quarter-sized chunks for these small red potatoes. All right, so we also need some garlic, olive oil, salt. I use a coarser sea salt, ground black pepper. I like a coarse ground black pepper. You could use regular black pepper, of course. That's a personal preference. I've also got some grated Parmesan cheese, and this is so exciting to me. I have a rosemary plant here in the house, and I've chopped some of those leaves up. I need about a tablespoon of chopped fresh rosemary for my recipe. What I've been doing while my oven is heating up to 375 degrees is I've been cleaning up my red potato. So some people get kind of freaked out about the idea of eating the skin on their potato. When I say some people, I mean me. I'm some people, okay? So I'm really particular about cleaning up the potato, removing any eyes that have sprouted, any dark spots or bad spots from it before chopping it up. So the size of my chunks for this recipe are gonna be kind of like this. They're nice little, sometimes triangle-ish looking chunks. You want it to be a good size, but not so thick that it's gonna take forever to cook or that they won't crisp up. As you can see, I have chopped my red potatoes up. They're ready to be seasoned and oiled. There's really not a lot of steps in this process, and there's not any steps that take a lot of involved time. If there's any step that is, that takes time, it's just this one, cleaning up your potatoes and chopping them into your chunks. But really, it took me like 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops to get that done. So let's move on to our seasoning step. All right, next steps. Very simple. We're going to take our bowl of chopped red potatoes. We're going to add some extra virgin olive oil. I'm going to need a little more than that. We're going to add our garlic. And then we're going to add our pepper, salt, our chopped rosemary. And again, that is fresh off of a plant in the kitchen. And grated Parmesan. Then we're just going to toss this and make sure it's pretty evenly coated before we transfer the potatoes to our baking pan. All right, so my potatoes have now been tossed and coated in the olive oil, salt, pepper, grated parm, minced garlic, and my rosemary. So I'm going to transfer these to the pan. I wanted to show you the pan I'm using. This is a baking sheet that has a grid that lays flat on the top. We want our potatoes to have a bit of a crisp to them when they're finished. What's going to help us with that, of course, is the olive oil that we've tossed them in, the temperature that we're cooking them at, 375, but also whenever you want something to have a crispy finish when it's baked, get one of these pans that has a layer that separates, that allows the air to flow up underneath and crisp what's sitting on top. It's a good tool to have in your kitchen. So I'm gonna go ahead and transfer my potatoes to the baking sheet and then get them in the oven to start roasting. So I've transferred my potatoes to my baking sheet. It's a really hefty portion I've got from the potatoes that I cut up. And that's a lot for me. I'm not gonna eat these all in the next few days, but what I can do is I can freeze them. And I could freeze them as they are right now. I could take some and throw them in a freezer bag and then pull them out when I'm ready to cook them, or I can cook them and freeze them and just reheat them later. And one great way to quickly reheat something like this, especially when you need a crispy finish on it, is just to throw them in the air fryer for a few minutes. So that's what I'll plan to do. But when I'm doing recipes, oftentimes I'll make a bigger batch of whatever it is, mix it all up, freeze them for later. All right, these are looking and smelling delicious. They've been roasting at 375 degrees for about 50 minutes. I'm actually turning the temperature of my oven up to 425 for like the last 15 minutes or so to give it a nice browning and give it more of a crisp on the outside. They're pretty tender, they're really close to being done. Now, one shortcut that you can take if you wanna reduce your cooking time in the oven is you can boil your potatoes first for about 15 or 20 minutes. Get them a little bit softened up before you move on to the step of seasoning them. All right, so my potatoes are done. They're out of the oven. I have plated them and I have garnished them with some little sprigs of rosemary, and I've also dusted them with some additional grated Parmesan, and they're delicious. Feel free to season yours to taste with salt and pepper. Some people like to drizzle a little bit of olive oil on top and then sprinkle on their Parmesan. I think that's also delicious, by the way. I usually go with, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I love pepper, so I usually do a little bit of extra pepper on mine. But they turned out really good. Now, these are red potatoes. You could do the same recipe with white potatoes. It works the same way. A note on the oven temp, I started at 375. I did turn it up to 425 to finish browning these potatoes. If you'd like, you can kind of find a happy medium and start your cooking process at 400 degrees, shorten the cooking time, still get the nice crisp at the end. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to let us know how it turned out in the comments on the video on YouTube, Dave's COVID Kitchen. And if you make the recipe, post it to Instagram and tag us, hashtag Dave's COVID Kitchen, so we can see how yours turned out. Thanks so much for joining us.